Hello folks, welcome to this tutorial. This is Data Skills for Everyone and we are still on the video series Basic Text Processing, how to handle text data with confidence. In today's tutorial, we are going to look at how to generate PDF reports in Python using a single file. So the driving question for today's tutorial is very simple, that if I have a single CSV file with several records, and I like to generate a PDF report for each record in the CSV file using a template, how do I go about it? So the way this works is that you have your CSV file, several records, and you have an accompanying template in the form of a text or HTML string that you want to apply. Now, an example of what I'm talking about might look like this. So this report card sample that we are looking at is an example that I designed using HTML, and I added a few styles, and you can actually make it look way better than this thanks to CSS and some other advanced tools out there that you can use. But for the very simple tasks that we have today, we can just go ahead and do something like this. But now let me also talk briefly about what we have here and the requirement that it places on us. As you can see, we have 4 columns here. Now the subjects are here on the left side, the scores, and then for each subject, based on the score that is displayed here, you also have to generate the grade letter, and then also we calculate the GPA. Now, just so that this makes sense, let me go and show you how the raw data looks like. All right, so here we have the raw Excel CSV file that contains the names of, and the situation that we are dealing with here is an example of students in a class with scores from 3 different subjects, and for each one we only have the raw scores here. Some of them might look slightly strange, but bear in mind that these are not actual data. They are just random data fake data actually that I generated using the Faker library. And so this is what we have, but as you can see from the sample that we have here, we do not have the grade letters and we do not have the GPA. And so one of the first steps that we're going to take in moving forward is to find a way to calculate these grades and then the grade letters and then also the GPA. I think something was missing here, but don't worry, in our final version we should have everything working correctly. So this is what we are looking forward to do in today's tutorial. Well, to follow along, you just make sure that you have these versions of Python, but most importantly, the only thing that you have to pay attention to is WheezyPrint library, which is going to be used to generate our final PDF output. But for the rest of it, basically you should survive with any version of Python. This is Python 3 that I'm using. Well, with that out of the way, if you're ready to see what we have in today's tutorial, let's get in and see. Alright, so here we are in our favorite IDE Spider, and I'm going to show you what we have to do. Let me quickly go over the steps. Well, the first one, I'm not going to even touch it because I've already done that. I have some data sitting in my working directory, which I showed you earlier on. It's this Excel CSV file that I already showed you, so I'm not going to spend any more time on it, but just so that you are refreshed in your mind, this is what our data looks like that we are going to be working with. Okay, so the first thing is to load the data and then to do a few pre-processing. So what that means is that we want to be able to generate a few additional fields that I talked about earlier, the grade letter and then also the GPA. So those are the few things that we need to work on. And then we do a quick revision of Python string formatting, because everything that we're going to use today is based off that simple concept of string formatting. So, and then we will continue from there to generate HTML output, which WheezyPrint is then going to use to create our PDF file for us. So let me go ahead and bring in our data. So remember, our data is sitting here inside this directory, in our working directory. So let me just go ahead and load the data. All right, and with these two lines, I have been able to specify how I'm going to get the data in. But before, let me quickly go over the imports again. These are for manipulating my paths, and this here is for handling the data frame. This is the final step. This might come in later on down the line, not so important at this point. But here we have WheezyPrint, which we are going to use to generate our final output. So let me run these two lines here and getting our data. Oh, sorry, yes. Let me make the imports first, and then I'm going to run these two lines again. Let's take a look at this. So what is my current directory? Oh yes, so I missed something here. .csv. Okay, so my data is correctly loaded. Now I want to format. Let me go ahead and do one more step, so that I want to get the data in a format that I can easily use in the template. Okay, and I will explain why I want it like that. So let me create another variable here. Okay, so with this, what I'm going to get is to get line by line the records in the data frame in a form of a list of dictionaries. So let me just take one out of it and then inspect it thoroughly. So as you can see here, this is one record and it's in a dictionary. The convenience of using it this way is so that I can easily using the keys to get access to the values here, and that's the point of doing this. Okay, with that also, it makes it very easy to iterate. There are other ways by which you can do this, but this is convenient for me, and so that's how I wish to go ahead with it. So with this out of the way, the next thing that we want to do is we want to be able to add a few more pieces of information. So for example, if I have this record, I want to be able to generate for each of these math. I want to be able to generate the grade letter for it. I want to be able to generate the GPA, and to do that, I have a few functions that I wrote just to make things quickly, because that's not the main focus of today's video. I don't want to spend too much time on it. So I have a few helper functions that I wrote here in this separate file, and I'm going to go over them very quickly. What I'm going to do is then I will import and put them to use. So I have 3 of them, as you can see here in the outline. Okay, 3: get grade letter, calculate GPA, and then total GPA. So let me go to calculate the get the grade letter and show you how it works. Okay, so first of all, you put in a grade, and based on this endpoints here, we generate a grade letter. Okay, starting from F to A, being the highest, and these are the endpoints between 0 and this number. We have this. No need to go through each one of them, but you can see how it goes. And then the final thing that I just wanted to take care of, just so that I can move on without dealing with too much errors, is to make sure that if accidentally I got, because I generated the grades randomly, I expect that at some point I'm gonna get negative numbers, and this is the way I take care of it. So this here, let me just run everything together and see what the output is going to be. So let's put in a score of, say, 80, and the grade letter is right here. If I were to put in a negative number also, this is going to be the output exactly, but then also with a warning printed out here, just so that I know that I'm not behaving well. So that is out of the way. We are going to check the next function, where is calculate GPA, and that also very similar to the first one that we saw. Takes a grade and then outputs a GPA, okay, which is on a 4-point scale, also behaving the same way using similar endpoints that I have over there. So let me also run that and show you that in action. So you can see that the GPA has been calculated nicely, and it should work for negative numbers as well. So it's also done. The final one that I'm gonna look at is get the total GPA, and the reason for this is if I supplied a list of numbers or grades, I want just total GPA from that. You'll see how I'm going to use that, but anyways, maybe you would have a better implementation of this, but for now this is what I have for that particular purpose. So let's work with that one as well, and provided a list of numbers being grades and see what the output is. And so this is the combined GPA for these three grades that we have here. Awesome. So now we have these out of the way. I'm simply going to import them and use them in our code. So let me go ahead and add them to the imports, and it's simple. Alright, so we have them imported here, and I'm going to use them later. The next point is I'm going to give you, just use one example of these records here and show you what I want to do. Then I'm going to go ahead and explain. So before I do that, I'm just going to do a quick visit at Python formatting, and then you will understand why. So let me show you a bit about the string formatting. If you remember, if you had a string like something like this, yes, if you had something like this and you run it, you can see that John gets substituted in this placeholder, and actually you can name these placeholders also. So let me show you. We can take a quick look at the details of how this works, but if you want to study more about it, there's this resource here that I want to show you. This is a very cool reference that talks a lot about Python string formatting. In its very basic use, this is how, well, this is the old way of doing things, but I like this one better, and it's very simple. So in its simplest way of working with it, this is how you go about using it, and these would be used to fill these slots here, and automatically when it renders, you see these values transferred here. What you can also do is to use named placeholders. So let me show you that one quickly, because that's what we are going to base our work mostly on, and there are so many things that you can look at. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. What my interest is in this portion, named placeholders, and that is the key to what we are going to do. So here, this is the data, okay, which is a dictionary, and these are the keys. Two keys here with some values, and the way it works is that you're gonna reference the placeholders here, which are named, and when you use the dictionary unpacking and you unpack the dictionaries here, these keys will be identified. As long as the keys here match these placeholders, you're going to get the values here that have been placed, or the key value pairs. Once you use the keys here to match the keys in the dictionaries, you're going to get their values automatically inserted into the string. So that is the trick that we are going to use. And so going back to our code, we want to rely heavily on using a data structure that has key value pairs. Okay, so based on this simple idea, we want to format our record so that we have key value pairs for each record. And that is what we are going to worry ourselves to do in the next few lines of code that we write. And so what we are going to do is, if we have a simple template, how are we going to make sure that we can put the records for each student into it and render a report for them? Let me go ahead and show you. Write a few lines of code and I'll come back to explain. Alright, so here I am. I wrote a few lines of code just to demonstrate for you what I'm doing. So basically I'm just using one example because later on I'm going to turn this whole thing into a loop that I will apply to all the records that I have in these records. Okay, so but just using one example to make things simple. So this is the dictionary that I'm going to use to create the name of the student that we are dealing with, and you already saw this before. And then the math score is the raw score here. Then the grade, I'm now going to calculate the grade based using this formula here, and I'm gonna do a repetition for this. Basically the lines of code are repeating, so I can save a little time by just copying and pasting and changing a few things just so that you see. When I'm done with this first part, I'm gonna pause and write a few codes, then I will come back and explain to you what is happening. Okay, so essentially this works for just one of the subjects. Okay, so you can see when I display the content of our report that we have these keys: the student, the score, the grade, and then the GPA, and that is going to work with our template. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work quickly for the rest and finish it so that we can now go ahead and do a simple template. So take some time and enjoy as I code. Alright, so with this I am done working on the first part of this problem. So let me run and see that there are no problems. And so you can see that this dictionary here contains the key value pairs for this student. We have the scores for each subject, we have the grade, letters, we have the GPA, and okay. Now we can even do one more thing and then calculate the total GPA as well. Yes, as you saw in the example, the total GPA will be displayed somewhere here, and that is the last thing we are going to work on, and we are done with that portion. And to calculate the total GPA, we still have one more function that can help us do that. So let's do that. Alright, and this is also done for this. So let's put everything together and you can see that we are good to go. The next thing, we work out a simple template that we will use to display this. So let me try and see if I can whip up a simple template here. That is going to take a little time, so you can also enjoy watching while I code it out. All right, so that was a long one, but finally it's done. We can test it out and see whether it works or not. So fortunately, let's check this out and print it to the screen and see whether this template is gonna look anything like we have typed it out. And it's not looking bad. Okay, so I'm going to explain a few portions of what I've done here. So you can see that this is looking good, and this is what I expect to see when I print it out. And what we can do is, now that we have this report here, the next thing to do is to render this out. So that is very, very simple. We can going to use this template, and because it's a string, we can do the dot format and unpack this dictionary, which is the report, into it. And let's run that and see. So let me make sure that, okay, so this is what we got. Let me store this output in a variable and run it and print it out, so that let's print it to the screen and see. Okay, so this is looking more friendly than before, and you can see that the fidelity is much better than just printing, just displaying the result directly here in the console. So using the print method works much better. And so this is the kind of thing we are expecting to do, and we can get even better result. I know that there may be advanced Python packages that can give you a better tabular display, but this is just to illustrate the concept that we are using to generate our HTML output. So what we are going to do next is to build on top of this. Now, to get a better formatting and display, we are going to write HTML, which is known to do this kind of layout really nicely. And well, we are constrained to write some HTML because Wheezy Print requires that we use that, and based off of that we can generate our PDF. So let me show you what I have that is going to help us do this. So if we look at this template that I have written here, it's just a few lines of code, and it's very simple. So I'm not going to go at the top, but these are just HTML headings that I have here, and you can see that what I have done here is very, very similar to what I did here. You can see that I have these placeholders. These are additional formatting indicators that allows it to center, and you can see this in the documentation when you take a look at it, as we did before. So there are several ways that you can actually format things, and let me show you. Somewhere in the documentation it talks about formatting. Yes, things like this. Okay, so actually what this notation means is that we want a string of length 10, however long this placeholder is. We wanted this, this is not a placeholder, this is just a string, but allot it 10 spaces and then center it. Okay, so this is how we center, and so the extra spaces are going to be paddings on the left and the right, basically. So that is the notation that I copied and I implemented over here, and you can refer to the documentation for more information about how that works. So with that done, let me quickly go through my HTML template once again, and you can see that I have these variables similar to what I just did. And so these are just headings that I have, but the real data is going to be spit out in these spots. What we have to do is to make sure that these placeholders match exactly the variables that we have used here. So let me just check. I have the math score, grade, and GPA, chem. Okay, so on here I didn't do chem, I did chemistry. So just to be on the safer side, Let me just make it chemistry and make sure that everything is going to work nicely. So I'm going to update this template to make sure that the placeholders are just the way they are, exactly the same way. And over here I use physics, but here in the template I use the short form because I didn't want to type too much. And I'm back here typing again. So all right, so that is also done, and let me make sure that is committed to memory. So what are we going to do with this? Well, we are going to do with it the same way we did with this template here. We're going to open it and it's going to be a string. So let me go ahead and deal with that over here. Okay, so this is the line that gets us our template, and you can see that our HTML template is indeed a string. Well, with that said, it qualifies to also use the format method. Okay, so what are we going to do with that? Now we're going to use that to in combination with our Wheezy print. So this is the time that Wheezy print comes in, and we are going to use it to generate our final PDF template. Now with Wheezy print comes two tools that we can use. This HTML generates the generate the HTML output that we want, and we can apply CSS styles to it. So with my HTML that I wrote, it has a few styles here, and it's a bootstrap. You know, I didn't want to waste too much time doing this. People have done it much better. Bootstrap can do it much better. So I used one of the styles here, and let me see where it is. Min.css. Yep, this is what I'm going to use. All right, so I'm just going to copy the relative path and bring it here as the CSS file that I'm going to use. All right, so and it's very simple. We just need to specify the file, and that is created. Now I need to create my HTML, and remember these two CSS classes and HTML are both from Wheezy print. And you can check the documentation of Wheezy print to see how that works. Let me just take you there quickly to see how it works. Yes, so you can see from the documentation how it works, and very easy. There are so many ways to create a PDF. Actually, you can even create a PDF from a URL, but that's not what we are working with. We are using this, and so we have, well, you can even apply inline styles just like I did, but this is just directly, in our case we are using external CSS. So basically what we did, you can create an instance of this HTML object using a string, and that's what we are doing. And then if you come down somewhere here, it talks about using the style sheet. Okay, and then that's the style sheets also that are being specified here. Once you generate your HTML, you can now use the write PDF method and you are good to go. So that's what we're going to do. Let's specify that we have a string and we are not reading from file, and that is going to be our HTML template, not a template. Okay, so we have our HTML template, but we need to use that to generate our HTML. So the HTML that we want to actually render is the HTML template with the data substituted into it, and that's where we apply the formatting. Okay, so here, remember we created this record that we are using for demonstration purposes, and the report here contains the keys that we need to substitute into this the string here. So we unpack report, and that should generate for us our HTML. Okay, and you can take a look again to see how this looks like. Yeah, it's ugly here, but you can see that the values here are being substituted nicely. Okay, so we have our HTML generated. Now let's go ahead and finish this line. So now we are going to write to our target file. Now I have a folder here that I'm going to use to be saving up my output. It's currently empty, so let's make reference to this folder. Okay, so with this we are good to go, and you can see that I made reference to the output folder. For now, let's just call this output 1. But when I put everything into a loop and I apply to all the records in the CSV, I'm going to generate the PDFs and name them according to the names of the students. So that is going to happen shortly. But let's run this out and see whether we get, and it doesn't complain, so we are successful. Let's see the output over here. Alright, so this is the folder. The output here is just the way we expected it, and voila, we have our PDF report generated for this student called James Scott. And you can see that all the scores and the grade letters, GPAs have also been generated, and looks like everything is working really nicely. What we are going to continue to do is to now apply to all the records in our CSV file and see how it's going to work out. This is looking good already. Okay, so back here in our IDE, we can add logic that allows us to loop through all the records in our PDF, in our HTML, CSV file, and make sure that we get it done for everyone. Okay, so here, these are our records, and just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to move everything down here. Okay, so remember, I'm not going to chain everything together. Now I had to do this little by little so that we can see how it works. But let me move everything down here. Okay, so this time I do not need this anymore. What I am going to do is to write a for loop. Okay, so for record in records, all of these things are going to be in my for loop. So for each record, I'm going to generate a report like this dictionary here, and I'm going to generate I'm going to generate this HTML output also. But I don't need to generate a CSS reference every single time. So I can just move this up here somewhere together with reading the file. Okay, and they can stay together, because I just need to do it only one time. But this is going to happen every single time for each record. So I can move it into the for loop. Let me bring it up here so that they are close together. And what is going to change is also that every single PDF is going to be named according to the name of the student. So again, thanks to string formatting, I can do a replacement string here, and let me do that. So this would be the name of the student. So here we have used student. Okay, so I'm going to access the student key, and it will be the report, the key student. So the student's name is going to be used to name the file. Okay, so if everything works right, we shouldn't have any errors when we run this code. So quickly, I'm going to now run everything here. Remember, we have about 30 or so records, and let me run everything here. Yes. Okay, so again, if I didn't do what I did with the code earlier on when I explained the helpers, I'm sure my code would have stopped running already, because there were some negative numbers, and I told you about how those negative numbers came up. But hey, we have successfully done this, and I can go back and inspect, and you can see the folder is full of so many PDF files, that reports that we have generated so nicely for each student. And you can see when you look at the report, the student's name is here. This is for Aaron Simmons, and the scores are here. These guys are doing really good. Let's check for another student, Eric. Well, let's check for Dr. Robert. Let's see whether he's the smart one. And well, not so smart after all, Dr. Robert. And maybe we check one more. So folks, this is how this whole thing works, and I'm sure that you've enjoyed it. Actually, there are so many moving points in this moving pieces in today's work, and I didn't have to write every single line of code here, but as you have seen, everything that we've done here, the key important points is to be able to generate a template, and you don't have to be the one to write the template by yourself. If you can get someone to even do the HTML template for you, then you can go ahead and do the string substitutions. And I think that there may be even more sophisticated, more advanced ways of doing this. For example, you might go ahead and use the Jinja 2 template, which I didn't even talk about. And I have a second template here that is based off Jinja 2 templating engine, and you can see that it's very similar to what we have done with Python string substitution, only that it uses a different set of notation, and it has a lot of advanced features that I can begin to explain. But folks, this is all that we have time to talk about today, and I hope that you did enjoy it. Very soon I'll be coming out with some more videos and tutorials to explore these topics even further. Until then, I'll see you later. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.